Hi, everyone. I'm Ginny Schuster with Who Do You Know? And today my guest is Franklin Taggart. I'm so excited to have you. I met you through a mutual friend, and you know all about coaching, and we're dying to hear your story. So, good morning. Thank you for coming on.
Hello, Jenny. It's really nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
So, I'm eager to hear what your story is, how you got into your coaching, because
Okay.
as we discussed a little bit before that, you've got a diverse background.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a long, strange trip, and I hope we have enough time for it.
Well,
um,
let's see what we can do. I'm sure everyone is eager to hear.
the longest career that I've had is in music, and I started performing professionally even when I was still in high school, way back in the 1970s. And I kind of grew up with the Brady Bunch and the Partridge Family as my role models. So I thought that every kid should be in a famous band, right?
Here you
Um,
go. I like it.
so I went to college on a music scholarship, but my
Nice.
mom, my mom was pretty insistent that I needed to have another thing because she's also a musician herself. She
Oh,
said, "You probably want to have another degree that can support and supplement the music degree." And she was right. She was very
yeah.
on target.
Yeah.
So I also got a business degree. So I have a combined degree in music and business.
Ooh, great
And
combination.
yeah, it was really nice. And the school that I went to actually combined both of them beautifully so that there was a big part of it that was music business oriented. So at that time, it was one of only 5 schools in the country that offered a music business program. So I never, let's see, I found after I graduated that I wasn't prepared for a music career.
Oh,
And I was married at the time, and I found that the music career wasn't all that helpful to the marriage. So I put it aside for a
you
while. Just
got
made
too
it.
many women hitting on you. Is that what happened?
No, it was more like just too many late nights and too much traveling and too much being away from
Oh,
home. No, it's never been the other problem. No.
I thought that's what happened to all famous musicians.
In our dreams, yes, in our dreams.
Yeah.
Um, but what happened was that I didn't enter into a full time music career right away. I found other jobs, and I started out doing sales, selling church music for a music publisher.
Interesting.
And I was with that organization for about 3 years and rose through the ranks pretty quickly and became a manager, and did really well in sales. But the company moved to Nashville, and my wife at the time didn't want to make the move. And so I ended up kind of on a strange path over the next few years, working mostly in social services. I had worked in a
Social
boys group
services.
home. Yeah, I had worked in a boys group home as a counselor when I was in college, and they hired me to come back and be a full-time counselor there.
Oh, okay.
That job turned into an opportunity to be the coordinator of a gang intervention program. That job turned into an opportunity to do a violence prevention and conflict resolution program in public schools. That job turned into the opportunity to be a curriculum developer for other like violence prevention programs throughout the state of Indiana where I lived at the time. So it's like all of these jobs just kind of led to new opportunities. And one of the opportunities, one of the doors that opened that just totally threw me for a loop was I have a very good friend who's a business consultant. And he was getting ready to do a weekend retreat. And he said, "I think I would like to have you come and just co-facilitate this retreat with me." And I said, "Are you absolutely out of your mind? I am not your guy." But I went.
He saw something in you that you didn't even see in yourself.
That's exactly what happened. So what happened was that I actually enjoyed that weekend so much that it kind of stopped me in my tracks. And he said,
Wow.
"Listen, I do this all the time, and you're welcome to join me whenever you want to." So for the next couple of years, we worked a lot together on different projects for like teachers unions and school districts and big business organizations and all kinds of things, where we would go in and mostly help leadership transition teams find, what they needed to do, and help companies reconnect with their vision and their values. And I really loved the work. I thought it was great. Well, one of the things that going into that line of work facilitated was my ability then to actually take my music career a little bit more seriously. My marriage had ended, and the first thing that I started to do was I started to load up my guitar and amplifier and go out and play at all these open mics and blues jams. And I started writing songs again, and I started to do all of this music again. So the business consulting allowed me to rekindle my flame for music. And at one point I decided I'm going to go ahead and do the music thing full time. And consulting is something that I'll do just on the side as I need to. And so I moved to Nashville. And Nashville was a great experience. I call it graduate school because I learned so much in those 2 years. But what I found in Nashville was that my kind of music and my kind of songwriting isn't really what's in demand there. That what I was doing was a little bit more personal, a little bit more reflective. And I was kind of at a low point because I couldn't find paying work in Nashville. The consulting opportunities had kind of slowed down, and I wasn't sure exactly still how to have a music career. So I ended up installing carpet. And I was installing carpet for a friend of mine who owned a carpet company. And the project we were doing was for a new Motel 6 in Nashville that was just getting ready to open. Hadn't opened yet. And one day, it was 105 degrees, it was summertime. We were working on the 3rd floor, and I was carrying rolls of carpet and padding up 3 flights of stairs, 105 degrees. I remember
They didn't have elevators, huh?
The power wasn't on.
Got it.
There was no air conditioning, no elevators, and there was a wild pack of dogs that was around the motel, so we had to keep the windows and doors shut. So it was just horribly hot. And I remember that day, the rest of the team had left to, I think, maybe go get lunch or something like that. And I was there alone, and I was just still working on the project. And I broke down crying in the middle of it, and I just said, this can't be where I end up. And about that time, I had met a person who lives up in Washington, D.C. We met on AOL in a chat room.
Wow.
And she was connected to the music scene in Washington, D.C. and invited me to come up there for the weekend just to see what was going on. And in that weekend, I was offered a job at a music store. I was offered 2 opportunities to be a lead guitar player for other songwriters. And I saw that there were a lot more of the opportunities that I wanted in music. So that was the beginning of my full-time music career, was when I moved to Washington, D.C.
Wow.
And I did that for about 8 years, and I started to have some health problems.
Uh-oh.
So in 2006, I started to have tendonitis in both of my arms, pretty much from my wrist to my shoulder in both arms.
Oops.
And it was from playing guitar too much. It was a repetitive motion injury, but it was so painful that I couldn't perform.
Oh, well, that took care of that.
Yeah. And then about 2 years later, I started to get really, really sick. My body swelled up to unrecognizable, status. I had, in the meantime, married again, and we had a son who was about 2 years old at the time. And I was faced with the fact that I may never play music again.
Oh, heartbreaking. Wow.
Yeah. So it was a soul searching time, but it was also one of those times where I just had to kind of scramble to make money.
Yeah.
And I found 2 things in that time that were really interesting things. At that time, the digital online commerce world was still really new. And I found opportunities.
Give me a timeline about when this is. Are you talking about 80s?
No, this was 2006, 2008
Oh, oh,
in there.
oh, okay.
So the ability for just regular people to make money online was just starting at that point.
Wow.
And
2000, so year 2000, the Y2K
yeah,
was, you're right. So
it
that
was
was
well
when they
before that.
were, we didn't know much about computers and how this mysterious World Wide Web worked
Exactly.
in 2000. You're right. Okay.
So I started experimenting, and I started experimenting with things like blogging. Affiliate marketing was still fairly new, and affiliate marketing is where you sell other people's products through your blogs.
Right.
I
Yep.
started my first podcast in 2008, and it was all about home recording equipment. So I scrambled to find different ways that I could make money. I did a
Yeah.
lot of freelance work of like logo design and graphic design projects and things like that. But one of the things that started to happen was really interesting is that people who I knew through teaching guitar lessons and through my music connections and through just my social connections started to ask me if I would help them go into a creative business. And way back in the days when I was doing the business consulting, I had one mentor that said, "You really have a knack for coaching, and it's something that you should consider." And I had kind of just shoved that idea aside because I really didn't understand what it was. He was an executive coach, along with being a really highly qualified business consultant. So that had been kind of tucked back in my subconscious. But what happened was, as these people started to come out of the woodwork and ask for my help, I started to get paid for it.
Now,
And I
how did
thought,
you bring up the idea of them paying you?
well, I think part of it is they just started to offer to pay me because we were spending significant time and we were going into significant depth, and they were getting
Okay.
significant help. So what happened was that I realized at one point I didn't know what to call what I was doing, but ultimately somebody said, "You know what you're doing is coaching." And I said, "No, it's not. This is not coaching.
I'm just talking.
Yeah, I'm just helping people."
Yeah.
But the moment that in my memory sealed the deal for me was that I had just gone through major surgery and I was in intensive care. And the chaplain, who was a friend of mine and also a musician, came by to just see how I was doing. And for the next 3 hours, we talked about his music career and what he needed to do next. And it
No
was in that
kidding.
moment that that was kind of a breakthrough moment for me, because one of the things that I realized was that for many years I had confused and kind of conflated gifts and talents, in that I thought music was my gift.
Okay.
And what I found in that setting was that my gift is something that comes through music, but it's not the music. And what I realized was that my gift also comes through coaching, and my gift comes through blogging, and my gift comes through communicating, and my gift comes through in all these different ways, and it's not limited to any one skill or talent.
Wow.
And that breakthrough is the thing that said, you know what? I think coaching is what I really need to do. And that was when I really started to take it seriously and say, yes, I am a coach. So I started to seek out training, sought out coaching of my own, and just started helping people whenever I could. And that's how it started.
So what I hear you saying is all sorts of things that I think of for small businesses. You
Mhm.
went through finding your passion. You went through pivot points throughout your life.
Yeah.
You also went through the health issues
Yeah.
and the daily growth plan of getting to know who you are. I mean, these are huge things that all small business people have to consider,
Yeah.
along with the accounting. How do you start billing and charging for your service and showing and feeling valuable
Yeah.
that you're helping people?
Exactly. So, my coaching comes from experience. Over the years, I've owned 21 businesses.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
Seven
Wow.
of them, seven of them have been successful, and the other ones have been learning experiences. But I bring a lot of knowledge and experience to the table. I bring a lot of passion, both, I love creativity as much as I love business. And I think I see business as a creative and a relationship-based pursuit. And I really,
Definitely. Hmm.
I look for ways that business can be much more human and help people to cultivate human businesses.
And that's the connections and relationships that makes a business successful.
You've got it.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness, you've covered 5 of the 10 things that I'm always putting out there and letting people know, if you want a successful business, here are 10 things you need to consider and know and focus on, because
Yeah.
it's not easy, as you can see, and people can hear you say, oh my goodness, the agony that you went through on this path to figure out exactly where your purpose is in life.
Yeah. It was, it was, I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but it was worth it.
Yeah, but these hardships are what people have to go through for some reason. It just
Yeah.
shows your persistence and your tenacity that you are going to be successful.
I'm not going to let it get me down for sure. I've got
Exactly.
to keep getting back up again.
So how do you do your networking? How are you finding your people, your
Wherever people
clients?
are.
So are you reaching out to them, or would you say that LinkedIn is a good avenue for you?
I find a lot of clients through LinkedIn networking. Most of the time, through LinkedIn, I'm involved in some groups, and I also I look for people on LinkedIn that I really want to know, and not even necessarily that I want to work with.
Okay. And
Because
what determines that?
I think part of it is that I just like a good example is that for the podcast that I operate, I look for people that I would like to have as a guest.
Oh, okay.
If they're interesting, if they would be interesting as a guest, they're a person that I want to know. So I'll
And
just
what,
reach
so
out to them.
tell me about your podcast then. So you've been doing that for how long?
Well, I've had 4 podcasts over the years, and this is my latest, just started a few months ago.
Okay.
It's called Your Own Best Company. It's for people who love working alone. Because I am one of those people. I really enjoy, I enjoy being my own business, right?
Yeah.
And
I
I
can
don't,
relate to that.
oh, can you? I don't want to have a company to run. I don't want to have an organization to manage.
Yeah.
Because I get kind of lost in the soup when there's that kind of a thing. And what I really need is the space to be creative, the space to be responsive, the space to actually, not be sensitive without being overwhelmed.
Yeah. Yes.
So being a one-person business really fits my life and personality really well. And so I wanted to make a podcast that's really designed for people who are similar to that.
And are you finding a lot of people like that?
Oh yeah, everywhere.
So does that mean those are people who want to be an entrepreneur, or what does it turn out to be their direction that they want in life?
It varies. That's an interesting question. It varies because I have some people that do identify as entrepreneurs. I have some people that are entrepreneurs that have no idea that they're entrepreneurs.
So it's their hobby, maybe?
Well, no, they consider themselves more makers. Like they consider themselves like artists or artisans or creators. They don't consider themselves entrepreneurs or business people, but they're really good at selling what they make. And so I work with people in probably 3 or 4 different settings most commonly. Most of the clients that I work with are older people, definitely
What's the
over
age
40.
range, would you say?
I would say the average is probably around 55 to 57.
Now, is that because they worked in the corporate world and
Most of them
they
did.
have a better feeling for what they really want out of life?
Most of them are mid-career and they're going through some kind of a crisis of identity. Saying, you know what, I've been in my career path for 30 years now, and I have no idea who I am. And there are other things that I want to do with my life, and I need to get paid for them, and I don't know how to do that. So a lot of folks look me up in those situations. So some examples of, I worked with a woman who's in her early 40s, and she had been a buyer for a grocery store. She had been a manager of a food CSA network for local farmers, and she had managed several farmers markets. But what she wanted to do was to create a consulting firm to help people put food products on grocery store shelves. So I helped her get her business started, and she's grown well past my capabilities and is doing just beautiful work right now. Another person that I helped is a fellow who is an author, and he'd written a book and had published a magazine, and he wanted to broaden his media to include video and podcasting. So I helped him start a YouTube channel and a podcast related to his publication and his book, so that he could build a bigger audience for all of them.
Interesting.
And then there's another, my favorite story.
Go ahead.
My favorite story is,
I ask you about a person that I ran into that might be interested in some of your input.
Oh, cool. My favorite story is a woman in her early 70s who's been a watercolor artist and art teacher for 35 or 40 years, and when pandemic hit, she wanted to move all of her art classes online. So we helped her build an online school.
Wow.
For her art classes.
So she would have to have a studio and then proper equipment for cameras and audio as well.
Yeah. So I help people who want to start something new get started and find the equipment that they need and do the business strategy that they need and all of those kinds of things, so that they can successfully move in their new direction.
I love it. Yeah. And that brings me to where I interrupted you. Sorry
No
about
problem.
that. But a gentleman who I had done a video with, and he's got a beautiful garden umbrella that his wife came up with the idea. And it seems to me as though he's a little bit all over the place, but could use some direction and help with whether he's done several videos, but it's not quite coming together. Would you take someone like that and help them with the best approach to get their product that they designed and actually make and need to get it out to market?
That's something that I have helped people with, yes.
Okay, that would be super. I'd love to connect you with that person.
Yeah, there are a few steps that immediately come to mind.
Okay, that's super. And we had talked about how you got started with your last podcast. We were talking about how you help people with that, maybe even myself,
yeah.
included.
I've helped a lot of people start podcasts and video channels.
Have you really?
And blogs too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blogs. Are blogs hard to do?
Not at all. They're actually probably the easiest.
What if your brain's not wired properly for blogging?
Well, that's a good question to ask, and that's one of the questions that I very often ask people is like, what's your favorite way to communicate with people? And if they really love writing, then blogging makes a lot of sense. If they really love speaking, then video and podcast makes a lot of sense.
Got it. I love it. Well, I'll have to connect with you. Is there anything else that you can tell the audience that would be beneficial to you and your business? What a story, what fascinating input of your years. I just love it.
Well, thank you, Ginny. I love telling my story, and it's been a rewarding path for me. The thing that I always mention to people is that when you work with me, I'm not a person who has a blueprint that I offer to everybody. What I believe is that you've got a unique path, and you can only really navigate that path one step at a time. So I would call myself the one step at a time coach. In fact, the first step that I take with people is called Your Best Next Step. And it's a free call that I offer to people. It's an hour call. And it's like, I want you to experience finding your best next step with me.
Oh my goodness.
So if you just, is it okay if I give a link to access that?
I love it. Yes, please do.
If you use the bit.ly, it's bit.ly/best next step call.
That's great. We'll go ahead and get that posted also with this video. We can
Wonderful.
add that in. Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you, Franklin, so much for coming on and giving all this great information about small businesses. As I said, you hit easily 5 or 6 of the 10 that I usually recommend to people. So
Wonderful.
Thank you for coming on today.
Ginny, it's my pleasure. Thank you again for the invitation.